Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Expanded Understanding. It is Friday. A lot going on today in some people's lives. Mine specifically. Apparently, something going on in Aaron's life too, because Aaron's not here with us. I'm not really actually sure where he is. We didn't communicate about that. So, nevertheless, I'm stopping in to say hi and see how you're all doing tonight. Kevin, Willow, Studio, good to see you here. How you guys doing tonight? What have you been up to today? Anything fun going on in your guys' realities? I've been playing a lot of video games recently, which has actually been really good for me because I had been taking stuff very seriously for a while. I have well, the whole last year of my life more, well, it's kind of wrong to say last year of my life now, so year and 3 months or so, up until the last 3 months, the last year of my life was there was a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of working hard, basically trying to get my life closer to what I wanted it to be. As a byproduct of that, there was also, there was some success, there was some failure, as is generally the case, but nevertheless, just when we do that stuff, it's good to really push ourselves, I think, and do as good as we possibly can do in those situations. And really actually, I like to push myself to kind of take it as far as I can possibly go, and do it for as long as kind of I can deal with. I think it's very beneficial personally, just to push yourself as much as you can, really, in anything that you're gonna do, but especially with your own self growth. It's really huge to do that, because it's easy to settle for something, or get to a position where you're this, this is good enough, basically. And I'm not really about that life. If other people want to do that, that's fine for them, but for me, I don't really see it to be a very valid and worthwhile thing to do. So me personally, I'm not really that much about it. But at some points in times, it's always important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and doing what's good for you. And while sometimes that might be pushing as hard as you can to see how much progression you can get out of something, at some points in times you will inevitably get to a position doing that you're all right, I need to fucking take a break and chill out a little bit, I've done a lot of good work, but let's give ourselves some time to just take it easier, and I think it's really easy to actually end up in a situation where you're kind of not allowing yourself to take that break, or you're on the other side of it and you're not really able to push yourself to ever really commit to something and keep pushing it as hard as you can. And I really think the balance between those, and maybe even kind of penduluming between them, is really the best thing that we can do, because there really are huge benefits to really both of them, given that they're being applied at the right time and in the right place. And that's kind of the case with every tool that we can get. And I think it really helps us to understand how they can benefit our lives and get the most benefit out of them if we start to kind of see beyond the idea that maybe duality helps us believe that is one of them is right and one of them is wrong, and move more to the position where all right, there's some right and some wrong in both of them. What can we get out of this that is worthwhile for ourselves? That's, I think, the best question that anybody can ask themselves about any situation. I look at it a lot the idea of basically being in a mine, and you're mining the some kind of material, right? And so maybe you're probably looking for gold or silver or something like that, but you got to keep pushing through a whole bunch of bullshit in order to get to that oftentimes. But what a miner really benefits from is being, kind of a little more focused on the wins than the losses, especially since really the losses are 99% of what comes out of the ground, and the wins are 1%. But if you're mining in the right spot, that 1% is really, really worth it. So, I encourage everybody, and I definitely do it myself, to really just push yourself to see what you can get out of a situation that benefits you, rather than spending a lot of time condemning the situation as to whether it's good or bad. Find the good in it, find the bad in it, find what you can learn from the bad, find what you can learn from the good. And as a byproduct of that, I think you'll really find that your experiences in life just become more valuable. And that's really what life is about, right? Getting value out of it. So if we can make just an experience be more value just by the way that we approach it, and that can really apply to every situation, I think that's kind of like a hack for making your life more valuable. Is literally just like, fuck it, I'm gonna force some more value out of it by focusing on how I can value from things. Uh, anyways, that's kind of a little random rant that came off the top of my head. It appears that Aaron is here now. Aaron, you want to drag yourself into the stream and say hi to people or not?
I'm
Either
dragged
way,
into the stream and I'm saying hi.
drag. You're a dragon now.
The dragon that's dragon. Dragon.
The dragon. What's going on, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's going. I was listening to the last thing you're saying. I was thinking about it today. I think part of like what's really valuable in life as a person is self-awareness, right? But self-awareness, I guess it's self-awareness plus comparing and contrasting yourself. So aware
Uh
of your
huh.
own thoughts, your own feelings, and comparing and contrasting them with the same thoughts and same feelings or similar thoughts and feelings you've had throughout life and finding
Sure.
where the valuable nuances are, whether it's a repeated thing that there's not anything new or there's a new slightly different angle or perspective, or sometimes I think just time. Just time goes
Sure.
by and you think about the same things or whatever, but
Well, it's like a
you may,
book, right? Like you read it when you're 8 years old, it sounds like one thing. You read it when you're 28 years old, and you're like, "Whoa, what the fuck?"
yeah, no doubt. That's interesting. I've heard Andrew Bartz is one people talks about doing like personal ceremonies. I think he does them annually, sometimes around the equinox or something. But recounting like every year of your life, understanding your victories, things you've done well, being able to do these things around a fire, write them down, some kind of ritual, remembering or I guess reassembling of who you are, what you've been through, where you've been, and just being able to self-reflect and assess in a specific way, especially if you set up a day or a time to do that regularly. I don't know, something like anchoring in your own avatar's timeline or something. I don't know. There's something to it, man. But even just the self-reflection and contrasting, it's just interesting. Time goes on, and you have the same thoughts. You're driving down the same road, but it feels different simply because time
Sure.
has gone on. You know?
Well, if we really get down to like splitting hairs on what like same means, we fucking never have the same experience, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm at least a little bit different from day to day,
Right.
and so that changes it just by itself. I think
Yeah, but
like
sometimes they
we
feel
find sameness in a certain way in our experiences, more
yeah,
so than it
sometimes they
is really
feel
there.
monotonous and repetitive, even if it's technically not the same. There's enough of it's the same that you almost tune it out because it's enough the same that it's all blurs together like the same feeling or the same experience. But then sometimes
Sure.
there's no new encounter, there's no new engagement. It simply is time. Time has gone
Yeah.
by. So you're in the same setting and then you're just awareness of yourself or the circumstances just changes simply because of time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. That's all it really takes, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I in my the contemplation of like infinite realities playing out. At one point in time, I got all like super jazzed on the idea that it was like, well, actually, like if you do something even like a second slower, it's a really different experience in certain ways. And as a byproduct of that, like the concept of infinite realities got like instantaneously so much bigger than to me because I got like this concept that now in order for infinite realities to exist then everything that could happen also had to be played out in every speed at which it could happen and it just
Mm,
like compounded the amount of possibilities like a million times
yeah.
and I think that's kind of like what time is and so a different time a slower rate of speed or time like all of these things they just change the experience so much.
What's your thoughts on the adage time heals all wounds?
It's bullshit.
Elaborate.
That's my primary take on it. um well, I work in a space where we deal with a lot of trauma, or maybe you could even not, maybe don't even call it trauma, just things that are holding a person back, right? And a lot of the problems, most of the problems actually, because by the time that they're going to work with a person like me, this has happened. Most of the
Hmm.
problems that people have, there's been like a constant iteration of it forever. And so when we say that time heals all wounds, I understand what they're saying. I really do. And I don't think that it doesn't have any wisdom or value to it or anything like that. But if you just wait for something to get better, it does not always get better. Sometimes it actually seems to get worse and worse and worse, kind of beckoning you stronger and stronger to come to a place of action where you actually do something about it. And like my whole like my foundation is completely based on the idea of action, where it's not it's a yogic basis. Yoga basically means action, and the idea that like things don't just happen. There's cause and effect, and in our life, the primary cause that we experience is our action. And while there is something to say with like the Zen and the art of non-doing and the art, the art of doing nothing and these kinds of things, the way even that those are being approached in those situations, it's treating the idea of no action as an action, and
Sure.
I
Yeah.
really think our action is what really helps us. And
So
so,
included in that would be, except from what you just laid out, like meditation or certain things. Those are actions being taken, even though it's seeming no action. It's an action taken with a specific intent. In this
sure,
case, to get over some kind of hurt or process it in some way that's
sure.
progressive, not just
One
time
could
going
say that
back.
when you meditate, you're acting like a monk. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
in a
sure.
certain way. I'm making just like a jovial nature of it, but
Yeah.
it really is an action to choose to do something. Like if you're doing something, you chose to do that, and so you're acting in that way, and yeah, I mean even like sitting there doing nothing is you're still doing things really when you're doing that.
Yeah.
So
I think so yeah, the time heals all wounds thing. So I think it depends on one. It depends on the type of wound. Sometimes it just takes time, distance from a circumstance. You'll have hindsight on it later. You can't figure out the answers now. You don't know necessarily why that fell apart or didn't work out the way it was,
sure, but
whatever it
wouldn't
was.
that be things look different later or make more
Yeah.
sense later? It's not really that they like does just them making sense really heal a wound?
Okay. Great question. Something to certainly dive into. I think so what is healing? So I think healing, it's some kind of, whether it's fully always a psychological cognitive shift, or you're shifting your perspective on something, or you're settling into a different perspective that you couldn't accept before for whatever reason, emotional reasons or subconscious reasons or whatever. You're shifting into a perspective that feels more coherent in the body, whatever that means.
Right?
But at the same time, I guess somatic release and stuff, it isn't necessarily cognitive at all. It's literally releasing the trauma out of the tissues in the body, and you just feel better. It's not because anything's
Sure.
changed or your perspective has changed at all, but the trauma or the pain that was stored that wasn't able to be moved through in some way or another is actually being released from the body.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
And I mean maybe in some cases I don't know whether figuring when I literally asked that question in like the truest sense that like I've spent time thinking about it, but I can't really discern whether or not making sense of something actually makes it any better.
Okay,
You
well
know?
let's try to break it through, because I think at this point it definitely does, or at least I guess it's subjective. Maybe as an objective truth, let's take the presumption that that is objectively true. Then how is that applied? Because I think it's very
I
subjective,
think
probably
the
to each
question
person.
would become do you actually need to know that? Like, does it actually need to make sense, or do you just want it to make sense? Because if you just want it to
Well, hold
make
on. Okay,
sense,
so
and
we could say no. I don't think you need to know to heal, but however,
no, 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 not to
does knowing.
heal,
Okay, what's the
per se, um,
we're talking?
just the concept of the making sense of something. Is it
Yes.
actually necessary to your life, or is it just something that you want?
Well, I think it's. I don't think it can be that broad. It's probably subjective based on the object being desiring to be known, or the
I
subject.
perhaps I can see where a person would say that, but I can also see where a person would say, "No, you don't need to know things. Like you don't need to.
Okay,
I
give
don't
examples. It's very broad
need to
strokes here. Give some
know
examples.
why my girlfriend broke up with me. I just want to. I'm curious as to why the relationship that I spent a lot of time working on has ended. So I want to
Right.
know. I don't need to know. Like, and
Huh.
you don't need to know because like a lot of people don't get that kind of closure, but they end up moving on with their life regardless in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's not the perfect way that they wanted, but they do move on with their life.
Well,
They,
so
in
I guess
fact,
what's
like
the
go on
goal? The goal
choice.
is moving on with your life. Then do you need to know a lot? Then you don't need to. I think for the examples you just gave, there's plenty of people that go through breakups or just things where they don't know and they move on. They're able to, in one way or another, whatever those infinitely subjective forms are. Their life does go on. They can live a positive, beneficial, happy life, even though they didn't know the answer to this thing. However, it's always been desirous to me, like, to know yourself. So if there's something that didn't go right, to understand what was me, what was that other person, not good, bad, right, or wrong, it just was. So I can understand where I did something that caused the relationship to be incoherent, or they did, or we're at different places in life, or whether it's other things. But the more you understand, then it helps you understand yourself and your yourself that's because you by yourself is different than you with other people. A lot of times, there's a lot of things that don't get elicited inside of us, except for being around other people. And so, I mean, I would want to know everything I could. I mean, I guess it's part of the idea of conscious coupling, conscious uncoupling. Those are part of the conversations that are had on the way in and the way out of a relationship. It's not just over, and then they're left like with pain, or so somebody doesn't know why it ended. At least there's some kind of, progressive, enlightened, insightful
Yeah.
discussion or
Do you not
discussions.
think that one could like come to an assessment of whether or not, like, objectively, do people need to know things? Not do they specifically need to know that thing or any specific that thing, but really just the concept, do humans actually need to know
Okay, so
anything?
you gotta. So how would that work? What would a human look like who doesn't know anything? How do they live their life?
By my measures of it, they would then die. Their life would cease to exist if they didn't. And that's what you need. Those are
St-
actual needs.
okay,
Everything else is really a want. Like, you don't need a mansion, but you probably need shelter. You know what I mean?
okay. So basic life needs.
Right. And you only need shelter really because, like, there's weather and shit, and you're not, like,
Yeah, yeah.
well equipped enough as a human. So the point is that, like,
Okay, so we're talking. Okay, let's
is it
differentiate death here. You're
actually
talking about
important that a,
biological. You're just talking about biological death then. Biological
I mean,
survival.
sure.
Do you need
Like,
to know
what
things?
defines? If we're saying, do humans need to know this? If someone dies, they're not a human. If they're alive in this form, then they are a
Right,
human.
right.
So,
But to die metaphorically, or your psyche to die, or something, or your heart to die, or your emotions to die, is different than your body dies. You need shelter. Your body will die.
sure, these are all metaphorical
Right.
deaths, right? Like, I mean, even when we say, like, "Oh, I'm so heartbroken," it's really actually not. Your heart's not actually broken. Like,
Right.
it still works. You just feel bad, right? Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very very pretty verbiage for not feeling good. You know.
Right. So if you don't have this need, you're going to die. But you're talking about physiology, or like your actual biology in that sense. For defining something as a need, you can only define it as a need. If you don't have it, you will die. So shelter or certain things, there's a good chance you will die if you don't have shelter. If you have
When we
whatever
say, like,
that
the
list is,
standard needs of food, clothing, and shelter, that's like why we say them, is
right?
because, like, if you don't have them, you will die.
Yeah, a biological death. Then you get into, once you can have a standardization of everyone has those things, then what are the new level of needs? Nothing? Or is it social needs? Or is this where you're
Well,
trying to differentiate?
why is there new needs once we've accomplished all of our needs? That sounds like a really easy way to hate everything and always feel like we don't have enough, to me.
Okay, fair enough. So once everyone has their needs met, then all we have left are wants. And
Right.
it's just a spectrum of wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Keep going. So this is a
I
precipice
don't really
for.
know where to keep going. I mean, I
So
think that's what we really actually want, anyways, is to live a life where we're completely driven by what we want. I think, a lot of times we, though, end up. Well, we like to say that we need things that we actually want, and by the saying of that we need them, we put
wait, hold
ourselves
on.
into a.
We've talked about, so I know you're going on that trail, and we can fill that out. But I'm trying to tie it back into what you're saying. Is if the human beings they need to know things at all. It's like to not die. Do you need to know things? Sound like we've still
Right.
figured out the answer to that is. We know what needs versus wants are now: basic food, clothing, shelter.
And by
But
that
does a
measure, I
human
don't think you
need to
do
know those
need to
things?
know anything.
Okay,
I think you just want to, personally.
sure. That's fair enough. So our life is engaged by our interests of intrigue, or things we want to know or pursue or experience or whatever, or placed into outside of our
Right.
own conscious awareness or control, especially as children or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need anything, or we don't need to know anything to live. It's all wants. So this all trying to tie it all back in. We started with, does time heal all wounds? And then that being the action and inaction over time. And then I think we got into the need to, but you need to know to heal. Or does it help something to know, to heal or move past things or to exist? Okay, that's where it tied into that. But then okay, specifically, let's talk about like moving on to time heals all wounds. That statement, let's refer to like a broken heart. So in that sense, so someone moving on, is it beneficial? It seems like it's always beneficial, even if it's painful, I guess, or sometimes it's not. It's just really beneficial. It's even not a whole lot of emotion attached to it, to have understandings or to know why that heartbreak occurred. Sometimes clean and dry, right? The love of your life died in a car accident or something. It has nothing to do with you, or I mean, then it gets into like, oh, if I called them, or maybe if they, that stuff. But like, really, if it's totally outside of you, that seems clear. What have you? And then you have to come to your own esoteric, understandings about what happens after that person dies and finding peace with all that and life and death and whatever. But what happened is clear. But in other
Right.
instances where it's murky or not getting closure, that being an issue for people, not having closure, even just psychologically, when kids, parents, kids die off in another country or at war or like whatever, there's a level of, and if psychological health directly correlates and affects physical health, then physical death can come from grief, like dying of grief or just sickness, and all these different illnesses and things can set in
A
over
very
time.
crass person could say that if you die from grief, in a sense, you died from kind of like not doing the things it takes to get over that grief. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, like grief is
Yeah, sure,
something
fair
that
enough.
really is a process to get over with if you follow the right avenues. Somebody who got to that level clearly fucking did not follow those avenues. Like they probably didn't even try them. They.
Yeah. Why do you
It's
think?
very
Why do you think people nowadays don't? Oh, how do I phrase this question? Um, why would someone die of grief nowadays? Is it because help's not available to them? They don't know who to ask because of things that are like what are the reasons people would actually do that, make that choice, if you will?
I mean, we can always go with the classic self-sabotage. Well, that
Rooted
that
in what? Why do we self sabotage?
there infinite amounts of reasons why we
I know.
self-sabotage.
I'm trying to open up questions here, and I'm thinking like I already know like what he's gonna say. Like it's not. We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a lot of reasons why they might do those. I don't think any of those reasons are actually healthy, though. I think
Well,
those
well, right. I
because
mean,
the
it
result of
led to
them is
dying of
detrimental
grief.
to their life. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, be, and you could say that it's because of lack of education we make bad choices like that, fear, a lot of different reasons
What do
that a person
you?
could have that. But at the end of the day, like the reasons are excuses. If you like, if we're
Yeah.
especially if we're talking like you could die from this grief, you're like that's an excuse, and you're excusing yourself out of your own life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is
I've
a weird
seen
thing to excuse yourself from, but I watch people do it all the time. So,
something that helped me, which is like visualizing dynamics of feeling states over time. um, and just being aware of just different awarenesses. Like there's it's more information, more I guess additional perspectives. We say circumambulation, but it makes me think, circle around a diamond or something or whatever, which is fine. There's facets, there's still angles, but still, I mean, circumambulation is really spherical plus every area in between and out of phase, and like there's a whole lot more to circumambulation than just thinking about it on the same line of reasoning from every perspective. You know what I mean?
right.
Like being able to spin off all that and
Yeah,
anyway,
that's got like abstraction, really.
well, in
I'm,
layers of just okay. Yeah, I'm starting to dive into that in my mind. But I was referring to something that just came to me in a meditation or in my imagination was seeing when we're resonating a certain feeling state, anger, depression, sadness, or whatever, it puts us in the awareness, it puts us in phase with other consciousnesses or entities or astral parasites or whatever you want to say, that to in that spectrum some other feeling states that are attracted to that energy that feed off that bioelectric or biochemical floosh, whatever they want to refer to it as. And
yeah, I mean, feed insinuates that they are like a living organism,
right.
which this is really a story that we're telling about a mental construct.
Mm,
We have absolutely no actual proof that there's any type of a biological organism that enters into your body and then like alters your emotions and stuff. Not like this. I mean, we got like some small parasites and shit like this and stuff, but like,
dude,
I personally,
your mic got super just like wah, 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 in and out. It's cool now. It fixed itself. Did that last time too.
okay,
Last like 10 seconds. That was just
weird.
crazy. But yeah, I think what you're saying too, I think so let's say that literal physical parasites, that they are connected to our neurology. There's over 400 million plus neurons they find in there, and it affects our mind and all that stuff, serotonin, chemical releases. So what if like that's the micro that's the micro consciousness of you, if you will, being projected onto our macro consciousness, anthropomorphized, but literally, I mean, they're analogies, if
Sure, but
the
it
one's in
should
our
be noted that
mind.
if we're talking like micro macro type of situation, the micro can never force the macro to do something. The other way around is true, but the micro is a cog in the machine that is the macro. So it can't just
Right.
like move the macro on its own.
Right.
That's not the
Unless we
case.
get power to it, or like belief to it,
Unless
or
you make
power or
it the
energy to it.
macro, but if you make it the macro and it's the micro, that's code word for you live in a delusion.
If it's the macro and you make it, okay, yes,
If it's
okay,
actually micro and you've done something to convince yourself that it is the macro in order to give
right,
it power, you are delusional by definition.
okay, yeah, that makes
And
sense.
we do this all the time. I mean, I think really like the core of what we're talking about right here is actually rooted in this because people feel like they need to know something and they blow it all massively out of proportion and the micro thing becomes treated like a macro and it's really not. Like
Mm,
the macro of any type of trauma situation is you get over it and you find a way to operate to the highest effectiveness that you can in the present moment.
yeah,
That's always the goal. That's the macro situation. There's a million different tools that you can do to micro that out, but the macro situation is still that. In the present moment, I operate to the most effective that I am capable. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, and we make a lot of excuses for not doing that.
yeah,
It's pretty crazy how much it happens. I mean, I've caught myself 50 fucking billion excuses so far in my life regarding exactly that. You know, it's 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 crazy because like even in my situation, I did not want to be doing that to myself. I did
mm-hmm.
not want to be operating in any way that was. I mean, I'm all about efficiency and effectiveness. I wanted to be operating in the peak effectiveness ways. You know, like it's the last thing that I wanted to be doing, really.
Yeah,
But that didn't change the fact that was doing it in just so many different ways, really. You know? And I think it pays to be cognizant of that. That, like, there's a better than we would like chance that I'm going to basically do stuff that is the wrong way of actually doing it for what I'm trying to accomplish. And if you can like kind of get your head wrapped around that a human does that to themselves,
right,
this gives you like the space for awareness where you're always checking like, okay, this is actually a good idea, right? Like this isn't just me making some weird shit up or something cuz we make up all kinds of weird shit.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Still though, I don't think time heals wounds. I don't think time does really anything but go by. You know, if we're gonna
yeah,
actually say what time does, time
yeah,
apparently like flows like it is a thing. You know, but time and space are like mentioned in the same breath a lot of time because they're both very in many ways exactly the same thing. They're just like a space for shit to happen. They don't actually they're not a happening themselves. You know,
yeah.
time doesn't happen. Time goes by and things happen in that space. So how would time heal wounds if time doesn't even actually do things?
Mm. Maybe part of what's inferred in that is that like over time you'll learn ways to heal with it. You'll like
And that's
there's a
why
lot
I'm
of it.
saying there is
Yeah, there
wisdom
are
in it, you
actions.
know.
Yeah. Well, I'm
The
just trying to
wisdom in
connect
it is
it.
that
Yeah.
as time goes by, people will shed perspective. You'll gain new perspective. Nature will nature. And over the course
Nature
of
will
that
nature.
nature, you will feel better about whatever you don't feel great about right now. Like that'll happen. And I'm 100% with that.
No
Yeah.
regrets. Do you believe in that?
I mean, I think you should shoot to live with no regrets. That doesn't mean that you're going to be successful.
Do you feel like you have regrets in your life? They don't have to be massive, like, trauma regrets, or they could be,
I've
but just
had
even
things
minor
in
regrets.
my life that I regretted doing at the time, and those ones, like any of them that I would say really like mattered to me psychologically, I've found a way to really like make peace with those, so I don't hold them today as a regret.
Yeah.
But there are some things like, well, I have like minor regrets if you're gonna be really loose with the term on
Hmm.
like oh shit, I wish I would have stayed up and finished that last night because it would have like I was doing better with it last night than I was doing with it today and I should have just
Oh
stuck
yeah.
with it,
Like
but it's not a
giving
fucking
up
big
flow state
deal.
or something, giving up flow state or sometime when yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
a place where
Yeah,
this had
yeah.
happened a lot in my life was like I needed to work the next morning and like but I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
doing something else and I wanted to keep doing that, but oh fuck it, like I'll go to sleep. I'm supposed to be up at 6 or whatever, and then I go to sleep and but then like the next day I try to come back to it and it feels all fucking hard and takes forever, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there was no reason for me to even be on time to work anyways, because everybody else was late and nothing actually ended up starting until 7, so I could have stayed up and done it, and so it just like it would have made more sense just to do it. But that's like that's not really a regret. That's just like hindsight about your life, and you didn't do it perfect. And it's like, I think it's you really got to find a way to be okay with stuff like that happening.
Yeah.
That's not really a regret. Or,
Well, I guess the
this is
regret
why like some people.
regret's
Go
like probably like a spectrum. I mean, then also there's a passive feeling state of regret at times to feel it, express it, find some way to find peace with it over time or in a moment, whatever. But the point is that there's a feeling of feeling states, but there's different. That's the difference between holding on to anything, right? Good or bad. If you love someone, let them go. But like if you hate someone, let them go too. Like you gotta let things go, man. Like let them flow
Yeah,
through. But instead of holding a regret, that feels like some kind of weight or just something like icky in the body. I don't know how to describe it. Just like why you can't why would you do that to yourself? What we do, self-sabotage stuff, we're not aware where we do or whatever, but just think about the concept though.
yeah. I think this is why they say that like you won't regret the things you did do so much as the things that you chose not to do. Is that it really feels like,
Yeah.
for me, that regret primarily comes from situations where I feel that something could have happened if I would have just like
Night, really,
done
really.
something. But
Sleep
then
well.
I didn't do anything, and so it didn't go so hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's why again, like the action thing pays off tons right there. If you're always like focusing towards taking action, you have way less regrets. Because
Hmm.
you don't really regret the things you did do, you mostly regret the things you didn't do. So if you're constantly taking action, it usually works out pretty decent.
Yeah. Because at least you're trying. At least you're trying something.
Yeah,
And
you
even
might be like, oh fuck, I wish I would have gone that way with it instead. But it doesn't really feel like a regret. It feels
yeah.
like, you just
Choices. Just choices.
hindsight. Like, I recognize that there's a better way now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I didn't before, but I do
Yeah,
now.
so it's like this. On one hand, it's like there's things to be extrapolated from it, like that to dissect and just understand and put into your algorithms for future reference. But then also just like look back and just like, huh, choices. I made one.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I make a
Yep.
million times a day, but that was one, and even a more significant, thoughtful one. But that was a choice. Huh?
Yeah. Russell Wilson,
Choices,
the
man.
quarterback for the fucking Seattle Seahawks, like, he has a mindset with this. This is a lot like that concept is really like throwing an interception as an NFL quarterback is basically exactly this concept, right? Oh,
Mm.
shouldn't have done that. Like it it looked all right. It looked good when I
Yeah,
started to throw it. When it left
yeah,
my
yeah,
hand, I
yeah,
knew that was a fucking
yeah. No
terrible
shit,
choice,
man.
you know. But like the best way to deal with that is that like he says like I mean, he's speaking directly to football, but he says in this job it really pays to have amnesia. Like you can't like go out there on the next set of downs being all worried that you just threw an interception and like, oh no, I don't want to throw an interception 2 downs in a row, because you'll just fucking play quarterback wrong. Like you won't play right then,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you'll do even worse
yeah,
because
yeah.
you're trying to make sure that you don't do bad.
Yeah,
You know what
sports
I mean?
is I don't know if we were talking about it or where I heard somebody talking about, but sports is like a really good way for people for kids to learn a lot of those dynamics of failing over and over and over again also.
Absolutely.
And playing as a team, and obviously coherence and that dynamic and those roles. But yeah, I mean, I guess I learned a lot of that growing up too. There's one thing I wish my mom didn't let me do. It was in like 7th grade, 8th grade. It was 8th grade, and it was like at the height of like the most insecure season of my life when just things were falling apart. I think what that was about the time I was being, or just right before that, I was being molested. My parents were going through a divorce. It was just like I was like super chubby. I gained all this baby weight before I shot up like 5 inches in a year shortly after that. But it was just like it was just awful, and I was just like what an awful feeling. Um, and I remember going to my 8th grade baseball tryouts and standing on the hill with all my gear with my mom. She was gonna drop me off, and I was so insecure about something I'd done my whole life. I played like t-ball, whatever. I really love baseball, and I quit. I told mom I didn't want to do it, and she let me quit. And I was like, "Fuck, man! I wish mom had been like, get the fuck over there, man. Just go
Yeah.
do it. If you don't like it, do it today, after today, or whatever. Fine, But you were here, fucking go do it, or don't even
Yeah,
address it or whatever."
that's a question for your dad instead.
Yeah, well, he
Yeah.
wasn't. He wasn't there. He was working. That's what part of the reason they
Yeah.
get divorced. They have lots of other shit going on. It's like so. It's whatever, man. It's like, but looking back, tracing back those, subconscious or self sabotage things too. Or, being able to identify, I guess, things like that, where there's an incoherence, where I allowed myself to sabotage myself from something, even if it was from someone else. But then seeing where my mom's subroutines or whatever have gotten into my subconscious and that whole experience, and how I experienced it, then rewriting them and reimagining them. Yeah, shit like that.
Yeah. It's weird,
Yeah.
the mom and dad thing. Like, kids try to exploit it so much, and you can see that they pick up like so early which one it's easier to get a yes out of, and which one is more often
Yeah,
a
no
no.
doubt.
You know what I mean? And
And
then
on
they
what subject?
manipulate that shit
Yeah, no doubt.
like so
Smart kids.
hard. It's crazy. Because I
Yeah, we
mean,
do
like,
that.
we don't give them the credit because they don't got like these book smarts. You know what I mean? Like they can't tell you, Einstein's theory of relativity and break down his
Dude,
equations and shit.
this
So they're not smart.
no, check this out. So this last summer, about a year ago, um I was hanging out with a friend and her daughter, who was like, she 9? Summer, I think she's 9. And dude, she had her mom and everybody wrapped around her finger. Her friends, like, just looking at the psychology of like children. I mean, or I don't know how else you want to see that, the social behavior. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like in a way that they knew she was sassy, but they didn't understand. Like, she really understood. I'm like, how is this kid this smart? Like, she's really understands this whole situation.
Yeah.
Like,
Your
she
kid's not just
really,
smart. Your kid's dangerous,
yeah,
dude. Like.
really, she does. And I started to call her on her shit at certain things. But just like, I forgot what I said at the time, but she'd look at me like, how did you know that? Just this glare. And I'd start to play these games with her because I saw what she was doing and I thought it was funny. I was just kind of pointing, I was talking it out in a way that she's like, she's like being exposed, and she's never had anyone like even know that she was doing that. She was her little queen in her own little world running shit. She's like 9.
Yeah.
We got along great.
That's fucking funny.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, kids say the darndest things, and sometimes they're like some of the most intelligent shit you ever heard, and you're like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, man.
Like,
The kids question for a reason. They think in questions too a lot more, I think, than we do. And maybe we think the simple line of questions. They get complex though, or they get into subjects from like, shit, that's, I don't know. Or it
yeah, I
could be
think one of
this.
the
And
one of the greatest things my mom did for me as a kid was just really normalize asking a fuckload of questions.
cool.
You know,
Good for
and
her, man. I think that's
she
super
really just did
important.
that through just always answering them.
Yeah.
Like I was that fucking kid that was like, why,
Yeah.
why? And she could have been like, shut the fuck up with the whys, dude. Seriously, like I'm so
Yeah.
sick of it. But she
Yeah.
never did. She just always like a little
Thank
bit
you.
deeper, a little bit
I'm really
deeper, a little bit deeper,
I'm
and
really glad your personal story validates how I feel. Because other people like, no, sometimes it just gets annoying. It's like, I get it if you're frustrated in a
oh, it
frustrating
does
day,
get
whatever.
annoying.
Yeah, but like, the question, I get if you're having a bad day, it's frustrating. That's just topping it off. You got 2 other kids to deal with, whatever. That's different
You
though.
know what? You know what's more annoying?
What?
Being like 70 years old. Your kid's all grown up now. They're like 35 years old. They're a total fucking idiot, and you know it's your fault.
Right.
Like you know it.
What I'm saying is though, the ones who innately like, no, the question asking itself bothers them. They could be calm, having a good day, they're fine. They just, the questions themselves annoy them. That's the part I don't know what would agree with. I don't see that as being beneficial for raising a child. Like,
No,
let the questions
definitely
be
not.
endless, man.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
they're
the questions are endless in
yeah.
life. You know what I mean?
Gosh,
Like
because it
that's how
triggers
it
so
is.
much though, because like it helps you repackage things in a way that's age appropriate, whatever that means to you, or cognitively appropriate. I mean, whatever that means to you. 2, 3, up to 11, whatever. But like, um, it makes you think about it in a new way. Or what's the whole Einstein thing that?
Judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree thing.
Nope, the one where he said, where supposedly Einstein said, you don't know it well. You don't know well enough if you can't explain it to the barmaid.
Yeah,
Like, you don't actually understand it.
that's
Oh
right.
well.
I'd never heard that from him. I have my own version of exactly that.
Do it. What
And
is
it's
it?
just if you don't understand, you don't understand something unless you're able to explain it by drawing it in the sand.
Yeah,
Just
cool. There you go.
stick in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
sand. If you
No
can't
doubt.
draw a diagram with that, you
I
don't
like that.
really get it.
That's better. That's better than barmaid, implying that she's dumb.
True, yeah, like
She's
that's
simple, but
so
like whatever.
misogynistic, dude.
No doubt.
Like fucking idiots. I
Dude, the
mean
sand one's way
barmaids.
better.
Like
Yeah.
whoa, like wow,
Yeah.
bud, come on.
Yeah,
Just
that's
trying to make
funny.
some cash here, bring some people some drinks. Take it easy.
That's why I like when I find these gems of phrases that I come up with or put together. So like that astrology is the science of how light affects the epigenetic expression of our DNA.
Mm,
Right?
okay.
Boom. That to me it feels like simple enough for the layperson for the most part to like. There's enough in there that makes
I'll
sense
tell you,
in a new way.
it completely lost every layperson at epigenetic.
No, I run into people
Absolutely.
a lot that talk
They're
about
not.
epigenetics.
Then they're not lay people.
But they're just people I run into. I don't feel like they're not lay people. I feel like they're they're normal lay people that don't wouldn't study
You've
that. I think
lucked
it's in the
out then.
media enough, or I don't know. I
Okay,
guess
well realize that
I'm in
I mean
Seattle.
unless
Okay,
our
look,
metrics are
I'm in Seattle.
wrong.
Let me do it. Hold up, I'm in Seattle. That must be it. Because even like maintenance people I talk to and stuff, that's not an uncommon thing. Security guards and like people, like I think it's
Wow,
just the
like
culture.
we can see so much of your psychology here. So you think
What?
security guards and maintenance people should be lay people because those jobs insinuate that
No,
they
in
are
in
somehow like
contrast, good.
lesser.
No, it's good to point out. And my point was, which I hadn't said yet, in contrast to most of the city are like Amazon employees and Facebook and a bunch of Google, like and biotechs, and like they're really like the cities. I mean, that's the people. So the maintenance people are in these buildings too. So
Sure.
they're around it enough. Like they know those things. So anyway, I think that might be what it is. It's my job I run into. I'm all over Seattle, and that's in those commercial buildings too. So maybe that's why. Not like I have a lot of these conversations, but I'm really surprised what people are familiar with. But okay, whatever.
What I'm
Fine. It
basing
was
that
not. It was
statement off
not.
of
It
is
was
really
not simple
more
enough to write in the sand. You're right.
what I'm basing that off is really more the idea that like the average reading level of the United States, for instance, not very good, and not very high, and
What is
as a
it?
byproduct of that, it's like seventh grade or sixth grade or something. It's fucking
Uh,
bad.
I mean,
But
probably nowadays, especially.
the real point of this is that like three syllable words they lose people. Like you lose a big chunk of people at three syllable words that you don't lose at two syllable words. Just that on its own. You know? Like if you
Yeah.
really want to keep something simple, keep every word to less than two syllables. Like it's very very
Yeah,
important, and
that's true.
that's a
Okay,
four syllable
here's
banger
okay.
right
All right,
there.
all right, all right, all right. Here's the thing. It's not that it's succinct for me. Like when I found that expression for me, that had all these like setting all those words, if you will, all these different things. I finally overlapped enough spheres that's like this big, massive mind nebula that's now connected and beautiful, right? And
Sure.
I made a sentence out of it. So I don't care if there's big words or whatever. They fit.
Yeah.
They're right. They totally express all this. I have no idea how I could put this in one sentence. Holy shit, I did. So to me, that's like
Yeah.
beautifully simplified. But maybe not. I
I think
guess
we
maybe
should
not to
use
other people.
the word lay Aaron instead of lay people, because I think that really is one of those statements that like
Mm.
it's said perfectly for you. You know,
Yeah, there you
like
go. Yeah,
your
yeah,
words and where you come from and stuff like that. Like when you hear that, you're like, yep, that's it. That's exactly how you should say that concept. But every time we have one of those, like that's not that perfect to anyone else. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
You know, it's
There's other
funny
people who'll
because
get it.
okay,
Don't get me wrong.
think about that. In that concept, that's totally me, right? So my higher self, what do you want to call it? But it's on my own just awareness of
You're
things.
lay Aaron.
Yeah,
Lay
all up
Aaron.
there. So
The French version of you, lay Aaron.
yeah, le Heron,
The
le
Aaron.
Heron, le Heron. Um, and so, but then when you're, let's say you have those phrases that are being expressed because of a conversation with another person. So then there's a
Uh huh.
phrase that's condensed down, but that's between the two of you, whether inside joke or whatever, it condenses into this thing that
Sure.
carries its own energy. And then shit, there's a third part. I totally left my mind. Nope. You totally left. We'll see if that comes back. Zach. Back, Zach.
Oh man.
Shit. Okay, bringing it down. Words, condensed layperson. Oh, and then also expressions to other people. So if you're writing like this guy, Joe Kitch, on Facebook, ran across him a while ago, and he writes some awesome like mainly towards men, but to women too. Blogs on like love and relationships. That's not may sound really cheesy. It was like nuanced in a way. It was like they're long posts, and I read a few of them. I'm like, fuck, man, like he words things really well, concepts and connection and just whatever awarenesses of different dynamics and like so when he's creating these unique phrases too that are standing out to me, but it's because he's intending to communicate that out as opposed to pulling all this together for yourself into some phrase. He's intending to try to pull all the stuff for people to connect with. So then it changes it
Uh huh.
too. Then it morphs into something that's more culturally relatable.
Sure.
Hmm.
I think that's the job of the good communicator, right? It's like fucking take the words and morph them around so everybody can make sense of them.
Yeah. Or what? But it's everybody though. I mean, I guess who you're speaking to. You know.
As many people as possible. Yeah. Your
Yeah.
audience. Let's say
Well,
your
then okay. Then
audience is
where's
probably the
okay?
best way to word it.
Where's the line on? We're probably all somewhere in a spectrum of
I'm
where our
definitely on the spectrum.
so where our words, our choice of words, um, overlap spheres with our choice of words for the sake of communicating to other people, the person in front of us, or a mass amount of people, versus just saying whatever the fuck we want to say, however we want to say it. They'll receive it or not see it, or receive it. You know, instead of it being a black and white line, that's just kind of it depends on the context of what you're speaking to, or what your intentions are in speaking to this person or having this dynamic. I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Words are a funny thing. I think like I think we would in certain ways would be better off if we didn't have words at all. Just because we would just
Yeah,
understand the nonverbal communication
dude,
so
totally,
much better.
dude.
And there's
Yeah,
really just like in certain ways like it's just flat out more effective than
really, man.
nonverbal communication.
That's some of the most beautiful, I mean, experiences I've had, and then I've heard other people have, just hearing different stories and things. You know, going intentionally days. I mean, depending on what your lifestyle dynamic or job or whatever, but like when you're able to do it, going days or just even hours or a day or whatever without speaking, but still connecting or communicating, right? Whatever that means,
Uh-huh.
and still interacting, but intentionally not speaking at all, just tuning into those different dynamics, or doing that, you know, every so often, or yeah, that seems at least like a heightened way to live with another person or other people or even yourself.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to try all kinds of different shit all the time. Never keep your life the same. Keeping your life the same seems to be a really easy way to get your life to be really fucking trash, even if it's okay. Yeah. Like if you have an
Yep.
okay life, but you've done that life for like 20 years, you're like fucking so bored with it and shit. You know?
Yeah, but
You're like, we
there
gotta have
seem to
something
be
different.
people though. There seem to be people though. They're fine with that. Like I can't. I mean, maybe like I don't know. That's more settling into even like a family at some point. That's a lifetime commitment. But like realistically, or who knows how long they're with you 24/7. That's 18, 20 year commitment ish. Whatever culture is. I don't know. Whatever the family is. But so like that's still a 20-year gap. And even in that, as a person, like interests change. So just because there's kids there and they're growing, that's a whole thing. It's not like your life's on hold. I know people do that, but I see other people who don't. They're fully present with their family, but they're still growing and changing. Like I don't know a whole lot about Adam. I didn't realize a guy that has that much time to think like that also has a family. Like, all
Yeah,
right, that
I
was
hear that.
I didn't even think about that until I saw he had a family. Like, oh, I didn't even realize I had that presumption, but just from other guys I've seen too. But he's
Yeah,
just
it
an
just seems
example,
like he must just get like an enormous amount done, basically.
right? Yeah, or he's
Yeah.
present with all that, but he has time cognitively to also do all this and research his own stuff. So I don't know where it's going with that, but yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy how much a fucking human can accomplish if they use their time well,
Oh,
or sleep less. Also, very good method.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, if you can find a good cycle, man, and get in a rhythm, it's yeah. But like, okay, so so in that, but I guess me as a person always growing and changing, where I feel like a lot of people, I don't know if that's the thing they think about a lot. Like I want to grow and change. They get into a life they enjoy, whatever that means. But from the outside, it can look like the same life pretty much for decades and decades and decades. And some people seem to be genuinely content with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a thing that happens. I
It's a
think
thing
different
that
strokes for
happens.
different folks. You know what I mean? I think
Maybe
that's
I'm just
like
not old enough yet. I don't
yet
know.
another cliche, but different strokes for different folks is one of my
Yeah.
fucking favorites
Yeah,
because
no
like
doubt.
it really, if you really take it from where it comes from like the idea of art, and that like it doesn't fucking Picasso's strokes are nothing like Van Gogh's strokes, or nothing like Rembrandt's strokes, or nothing like another great painter's strokes. That does not change the fact that they're all great painters. It
Yeah.
doesn't change it, just not a fucking bit.
Yeah.
But you're gonna like one of them more than the other one,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that you're gonna like one more than the other one is the reason why that thing's there, and the reason why there's space for it and everything. It's fucking great. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? all kinds of beneficial shit to it. Yeah. Let people make their strokes the way that you want. I'm going to go here in a second. Be open. Allow people to be who they are, man. You might be surprised by how fucking awesome they are when you just nurture them just being who they are, and you're not trying
Yeah.
to like shut them down and turn them into some kind of specific person that really matches what you think people are supposed to be like, or you're like judging or determining whether or not you're going to keep them in your life because they act like this. Look at them and go like, what is it that they do? You know what I mean? Like, what's really cool about them? Or as the way I approached it originally was like, find the genius inside of them. I decided to like shift my concept of genius from being like a talent that some random people had to really actually more something that is inside of people, and it may be latent or it may be active. But if I wanted to see more genius in the world, then I should start finding the genius in each thing
Okay.
rather than trying to find the geniuses.
And finding like the inner genius, right? The most beautiful thing I think when I've seen in people, no matter who they are, what they do, or how they think, is when they have those unique thoughts. Like you can tell it's like some kind of inner thought, like it's their own intuitive connection, question, presumption, line of reasoning, something that's like just totally, I don't know what else to call it. I don't have a way to describe it, so we'll call it magic, right? Because it's great. You just see it in a person when it's this pure inner thing, instead of just rhetoric, right, or repeating what they've heard, or just regurgitating out things. And that's really beautiful. So finding that in anybody, I think that's definitely present in anybody. It's just set and setting and circumstance or whatever, and holding space for people in that way. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's do more of that.
Yeah. If we world peace is going to be a place where everybody's okay with what everybody else does. Like that's literally what it means at its core, you know. And there's a lot of different ways to go about that. We can cut out all the people who think other ways, or we can figure out how to work with all the other ways. And I think people will find that it's if they choose to play the game of getting rid of all the other ways, they'll find that eventually leads to someone else also playing that game and getting rid of their way. And so it's kind of a self-defeating prophecy, and I just don't think it's it's not the way to go. Acceptance, that is what will get us to a place where everybody feels good all the time. I don't think that's the only thing it takes, but I think that's part of it personally. So, anyways, I love you very much. I hope you have a very wonderful night. I'm thankful that I can accept you and all of our viewers into my life.
Yeah.
Please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, check out the social media links in the description below. Maybe follow us or join the Discord. It's not really follow. It's become a part of a community inside of there. And
we'll start playing games, live streaming, once we can get a few more people. Got to play that game.
I wait for people to idle in there all the time. If you have a PC or a laptop, consider running Discord on there so that you can just idle inside of it all the time, and you can basically use it like a chat program that all your friends are in, hopefully.
Yeah, the game is Among Us, and it's like, what'd you say it was, like Clue or something?
It's kind of like Clue. Clue.
Yeah, but it's a group Clue game.
Yeah, I mean you play Clue with the group too,
or that kind of thing. But yeah, we should come play. So we'll do it. Come on, Kevin, Willow, let's get on board here. Let's get the inside group going, then we can expand out so we can get it going.
All right, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being here. We'll see you again tomorrow. Frank's show tomorrow. 6 o'clock. Check it out if you want to, I guess.
And then we'll be on right after.
It seems that we will. That is usually the case. All right. I love you, everyone. We will talk to you on the morrow.
Splash screen.